Hey innovators! Today we're going to be working on a really cool project and we're going to learn how to make paper. We're going to use pieces of scrap paper that you find at home or recycled paper, and we're going to use a technique in order to make our own custom little sheets of homemade paper. These are great for cards, for art, or even just for stationery. So let's take a look at the materials that we need and let's dive into our project. Innovators, let's take a look at the materials that we're going to need. So to make our paper, we're going to need some paper scraps. Newspaper works really well. I have a part of an old paper coffee filter, some construction paper, even computer paper works really well. The other thing we're going to need is a set of popsicle sticks in order to make a frame for our screen. So some popsicle sticks. You're going to need screen material. You can find this at a hobby shop, you can order it online, or you can even use cheesecloth. So you're going to need a little piece of that screen material, a good pair of scissors. If you have access to a hot glue gun, you can use a hot glue gun. Otherwise, for this project, in this demonstration, I'll be using a couple of these small binder clips. So we have everything that we need and we can start to build. Now remember, you're also going to use a blender in order to make your paper mixture. And last but not least, if you have access to a hair dryer, that's great, but it's not necessary. You can also let your paper dry on its own. So we have everything we need. Let's start to construct. Innovators, now that we have all of our materials, we can start getting ready to make paper. The first step that we're going to do is create a small frame using some popsicle sticks in order to create a screen. We're going to use this special screen fabric and we're going to apply it to our small frame in order to create a screen that we'll use to sift all of the paper fibers in a mixture that we'll make in order to press and make into paper. So let's gather the materials, let's get ready, and let's start building. All right, innovators, let's get to work. So the first thing that we want to create is a frame for our screen. So we're going to do that using 4 popsicle sticks. Now, in order to create the frame, we're going to need some glue in order to bond these. Now, I'm going to be using a hot glue gun, but if you don't have access to a hot glue gun, you can also use wood glue, or you can use super glue. What you want to avoid is it's either a glue stick or your traditional white glue. The reason for that is that it's water soluble, so when it mixes with the water, it'll start to come apart. While wood glue is usually waterproof, so is super glue, and so is a hot glue gun. So I'm going to go ahead and use my glue gun, and I am going to apply a little bit of glue those corners, and I'll make sure that it's lines up with my other popsicle stick, and I'll just press down and I'll make sure that that's bonded. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing up here. A little bit of glue. Press down. And I'm gonna let that dry and just give it a little test. Feels pretty good. Okay, excellent. Now we can move on. We're going to take our piece of screen and we're going to apply it to our frame. Now, there are several ways that you can do that. You can either use hot glue, again, to put some along the edge, and you can stretch your screen over that, just like that. Another option that you have is you can just lay your screen material, your fabric, on top, and you'll flip this over. And you can use a couple of these binder clips in order to secure it. Now, the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to fold the fabric over, and I'm going to place another popsicle stick on top, and I'm going to take my binder clips and I'll place them on these corners here. You want to make sure that they're nice and tight. Just that one. Okay, that feels pretty good. And then I will pull the fabric just to make sure that it's nice and tight there. I will fold it over, place my other popsicle stick here, and then I'll secure this with another binder clip. So let's try that again. Excellent. Now, you may have to try this a few times, but once you get it, you are good to go. All right, excellent. So now I've stretched the material over my screen, and I can cut off any extra. I'll do the same thing over here. Great. And if the screen material feels a little too flimsy, then you're just going to want to stretch it a little bit more just to make sure that it's nice and tight. So just pulling a little bit. Great. That feels pretty good. Okay, and if you have extra binder clips, you can place binder clips along the edges as well to stretch it out a little bit more. But this is what we'll be dipping into our paper mixture in order to pull the fibers out of that mixture to make our little sheets of paper. Once you've done that, you can use a hair dryer in order to dry it, or you'll just take paper towels and remove the moisture, and you can let your paper sheets dry on their own. So, our screen is ready. Now let's head over to the blender and let's make our paper mixture. Innovators, now that we've already constructed our small frame, we're ready to make the mixture that we're going to make our paper out of. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to find scraps of paper, recycled paper around your house. You can use newspaper. You might want to use some of this construction paper from old projects, old printer paper, copy paper. So look around the house, anything that you have will work. Because what we're gonna do is we're gonna soak it in water and we're gonna blend it and cut it up. What we wanna do is we wanna break up all of the fibers that are inside of this paper. So when we put our screen through it, we're just gonna pick up the fibers and we're gonna compress them together, and that's what's gonna make our paper. So I decided to use a lot of scraps with red and pink hues because I'm hoping that my paper is going to be slightly pink. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these scraps and I'm going to cut them up into smaller pieces so it's easier for my blender to take apart. Looks good. And you don't want to use anything that's too thick. You want to pick some fibers that are going to break down very easily. So newspaper is always ideal. Copy paper, right, because it's really thin, it's not too thick. And also construction paper. Construction paper works really well. What you want to do, if you are using, if you're recycling old projects, please make sure that there isn't any glue or staples or anything that might get caught up in your blender, because you don't want to ruin your blender. The other type of paper that I love using is tissue paper. It's super thin, it breaks apart very easily, so I think we are good to go. Now I'm going to add a healthy amount of water. Right? You want to make sure that the paper is covered up. Awesome. Now, another trick that you can do is you can also let this sit for a while. The longer it sits, the more the paper takes in the water, it soaks it up, and it starts to really break apart those fibers that we want. So I'm going to let this sit for just a few minutes, and then I'm going to come back and we'll use the blender to take it all apart. All right, innovators, so our paper mixture has been sitting in water for a little while. I'm gonna take out a little sheet of paper. Ooh, It's falling apart very easily, which is exactly what you want. So I'm ready. I'm going to grab the cover to my blender and we're going to blend it all together. Okay. Now, innovators, please make sure that you have the assistance of an adult or the supervision of an adult when you're doing this. You want to make sure that you are properly using your blender. First and foremost, you want to make sure that you are being safe and that you're not going to hurt yourself when using this. Second of all, you also don't want to ruin the blender that you have at home, right? So please ask an adult to help you with this. There are sharp blades inside of the blender that are spinning. We want to make sure that you are doing this in the safest way possible. So, I'm going to load this up. Okay. Innovators, you want to let this blend really well. Okay, so I'm going to let mine run for quite a while. What I want is all of the fibers in that paper to really start to break apart. The consistency that I want is almost like a paper smoothie. So if you see big chunks of paper, keep on blending. So I'm going to turn my blender back on and I'm going to let it do its magic. A little bit more. That's looking pretty good. Excellent. As you can tell, all of the fibers in my paper have really broken down. So I think we are ready to use our screen. All right, innovators, we are going to now pour our mixture into a shallow container so that we can use our special screen in order to create our paper. So I'm going to go ahead and put this container here. As you can tell, it's kind of shallow, which is perfect because that's what I'm going to need in order to sift the fibrous material out of this mixture. And I'm going to go ahead and slowly pour. Now remember, this is kind of a messy project, so be mindful of the mess that you make and help clean it up. Okay. Now I'm going to take my finger, you can use a spoon just to kind of mix it around. And now I'm going to take my screen. Okay? And I'm going to sift through this paper. So let's get ready to do that. I'm going to let this mixture sit for a second and we'll get started. All right, innovators, my screen is ready to go. I'm using my paper clips to hold the material, the fabric, the screen fabric in place, and we can start to dip. So I'm going to start on one side, and I'm slowly going to dip and lift. Ooh, you get a nice layer of those fibers, right? That fibrous content that you want for your paper. So I'm going to keep doing that a few times. Excellent. Until you get a nice thick layer. So let's take a closer look at that. Great, let's see if I can dip it one more time and get some more fibers from there, from the water material. Awesome, that's looking great. Okay, so now I'm gonna grab some paper towels and I'm gonna set this aside. So we'll be right back. All right, now that we've sifted some of that fibrous material, let's get ready to set it out so it starts to dry. So I'm going to move this over. I'm going to set up a little towel right here and a couple of sheets of paper. Just some paper towels down. That looks great. Now, the next step is very important. You're going to take a few more sheets of paper towels and you're just going to lay them on top and you're going to gently press down. Just like that. Okay, now this is crucial. You're going to gently peel this back. You want to make sure that you're not taking a lot of those fibers. Perfect. That was great. Okay, and we'll do that again just to soak up a bit more of the paper, of the water, excuse me. Press down, and you want to make sure that you're pressing down firmly because you're squeezing the water out of that mixture, and the only thing that you're leaving behind are those fibers that are going to make your paper. So this is looking great. I'm going to lift this up. Okay, that looks really good. All right, perfect. Now I'm going to speed up this process by grabbing a hair dryer. So I'll be right back. You can either just leave it here to sit and dry a little bit more. You can keep using paper towels to soak up that moisture. Or if you have a hair dryer at home, you can speed up the process. So I'm again gently remove my paper towel, just like so. Excellent. And I'm going to go grab my hair dryer so we can speed up this process. All right, innovators. So we've let our screen dry a little bit more, but we're going to use a hair dryer to continue that process. Now you might be wondering, we used a lot of paper towels in trying to dry that up. That's not a problem because these paper towels you can throw in your blender, mix them up to make more paper. So make sure you don't throw this away. Put it off to the side. Okay, now I grab my hair dryer. I'm going to put it on heat. It can either be low heat or high heat, and I'm going to start to dry this paper. Awesome. I'm going to remove this wet towel. Now I want to dry it on both sides, so I'm actually going to flip my screen over gently. Okay, this is looking really, really nice. So now I'm going to gently take my paper, and I want to make sure that I don't tear it. So I'm going to gently remove it as best as I can. There we go. This is coming off nicely. Awesome. Oh, that looks very lovely. So I'm going to go ahead and set it down. I'll dry it just a little bit more. Now, another great trick you can do is, if you want your paper to be really, really flat, you can actually take an iron and you can iron it out. It's going to dry really fast and you're going to get really flat, nice paper. But I think I'm pretty happy with how this has turned out. So I'm going to grab a pair of scissors and just trim it a little bit. Now, a really cool part of this process is that you can experiment. Oh, look at that. Beautiful, beautiful little piece of pink paper made from recycled paper that you find at home. That looks great. Now, a really neat trick that you can do and you can experiment is, if you're interested, you can actually add flowers or leaves to your paper and let them dry out. One of the really neat aspects of this project, innovators, is that you can make plain paper just like this. My pink sheet turned out really nice. Or you can also dry objects in there really thin. You can put flowers in there or leaves to make custom paper that looks really beautiful. So experiment, use your imagination. What you want to make sure of is that all of those elements you include in there, they get caught in between the paper fibers so that they really get ingrained in there and they're not just sitting on top. Because if they're just sitting on top, they are going to fall apart. So this is a great science experiment that really explores how fibers come together when you break them down, and then you can use them to create new materials. Very cool.
Innovators, thanks for joining me today and trying out this really cool project. We made some paper using scraps of recycled paper that are just sitting around your house. And remember, the really fun part about this project is that you can make some really beautiful custom paper, right? You can engrain leaves and flower petals into your paper to make it really beautiful and artistic. So make sure that you use your creativity and you experiment a little to see what kind of cool paper you can make. So once you let it dry, remember you can use an iron to kind of straighten it out a little bit more, but this is great. This is great for making cards, artwork, all sorts of really fun and unique things. So thanks for joining me today, and remember to always think critically and to think creatively. Until next time, innovators.